Hello and welcome again to class. I thank you again for joining in our class. Now, we already started a series on animal nutrition, in which case we're focusing on minerals, and we started with calcium. We've dealt with calcium historical perspective, the sources of calcium, absorption, metabolism, functions of calcium, and the others. And now we commenced already with, in the previous class, with phosphorus. Now we're taking them one by one, we're taking the minerals. So in terms of biodiversity, our bioavailability, calcium happened to be number one. So we've moved into another one that is much in availability. The next we have phosphorus. We already started, we said in the previous class, just a little run through what we did. Now, you want to go back to the previous videos, please go back to the previous video if you've missed some of the things we've already done. And also, please like, share, subscribe so you get more value, you get more information that are good. We've already talked about diseases of animals. And also, follow. Thank you so much. Now, we already looked at phosphorus. We said it's P in scientific representation, atomic weight of 31. Now, we looked at a historical perspective, how it was first discovered and how it was already called phosphorus in respect to being something that's glowy. And then by the 20th century, started looking at it in respect to its function in helping on the teeth and the bones, just like calcium does. And we looked at the dietary sources, being animal source from animal tissue, plant tissue, processed food that is incorporated into processed food, and that. Now we'll be going straight into absorption of phosphorus. Now, having known the sources of phosphorus, now what are the places when eaten, when phosphorus is taken in food, like you have dairy products and maybe plant tissues and phytates, legumes and cereals, how after digestion, how are they absorbed in the body? So we just go briefly, not into all the bogus biochemistry of it, just briefly so every other person will be carried. We're not looking so much details in the combustions and the others in biochemistry of it. Now first we look at the absorption. The absorption occurs, 60 to 80% of absorption of phosphorus occurs in the small intestine, largely. About the small intestine is the actual site. Now, there are two pathways it could take. One is the active, the other one is the passive. Of course, you know, when something is active, you know, the involvement, very active. Passive, just not easily noticeable. Now, when it's passive, it's by diffusion from a region of higher concentration to another, just gradually. Now, this is usually when phosphorus is in abundance. Now, when, on the other hand, it is in the active transport, when phosphorus is in low availability. So what happens is that calcium, which is vitamin D, helps in the making phosphorus available. So the process, the biochemical process, will be touched maybe some other time, or could we just discuss it when we're talking about vitamin D perfectly. Now, so this usually, active transport of it usually occurs when we have low availability of phosphorus. Then we look at the factors that can enhance, so that when these factors are in place, phosphorus absorption is actually enhanced or encouraged or made to occur properly. Number one, like we said, the active transport, the availability of vitamin D, which is calcitriol. And then number two is phosphorus from animal sources because of bioavailability. Now, there's something about animal sources for minerals and certain vitamins and even amino acids. Animal sources or animal tissues tend to have a higher profile or a more complete profile of certain amino acids or amino acids or minerals and minerals or vitamins. So the phosphorus from animal tissues are more in availability and also easily digestible and absorbed. So bioavailability you have, the more. On the flip side, there are certain factors that may inhibit or prevent the absorption of phosphorus. Now let's look at that. Number one, you see the intake of calcium, excess intake or excess availability of calcium in the blood, or iron or aluminum. Now, why do you say that? I will talk about calcium in the previous. We've seen that, we'll not even talk about the function of this. When we get there, we'll see that the function of phosphorus and calcium are about the same thing. They both help to strengthen the bone and the teeth, about the same thing. Now, somehow, they tend to be somewhat mutually exclusive, in which case, if this one is available in large quantity, the other should not also be available in large quantity. So if, for example, in broiler ration I have up to 1.5 or 1.3% of calcium in, let's say, broiler finisher feed, then I should have close to about 0.3% of phosphorus. The both of them should not be high. Now, if they are high, one will inhibit the absorption of the other. So that means, for example, now by binding it and making it unavailable for absorption. So if you want the both of them to be properly absorbed, so one will be higher, and in most cases calcium is made to be more higher in or used, because calcium happens to be provide more to the function in the strengthening of the bones than phosphorus, and also it's also more bioavailable than phosphorus. So now we'll see when calcium is high, they call them antagonistic minerals. They are antagonistic. We call them antagonistic minerals. In which case, when one is in high quantity, the other shouldn't be as much as high. So it's like almost mutual exclusive, although just reduce the other. So high intake of calcium or iron or aluminum can or should or would inhibit the absorption of phosphorus. As a matter of fact, they bind the phosphorus and make them unavailable. Another thing that can be a hindering factor to the absorption is phytates in plant food. Now, I haven't talked about this in the we talked about calcium. What is phytate? Phytate is the salt of phytic acid, and it's usually in the structural component of plant materials, that is the tissue of plant materials. So phytic acid mixed in, especially phytic acid in cereals and legumes, usually inhibit absorption of phosphorus. So, and the next is an excess of magnesium. Magnesium also is good for the teeth. You now see that excess of magnesium and calcium are about the same thing. As a matter of fact, look at the chemistry. In chemistry, they are both alkaline and alkaline earth metals. So they cannot inhibit this group 2 elements. Now, I'm going to stop this at this point. In the next class, we want you to look forward to, we'll be looking at the metabolism first and then function of phosphorus. We want to take it in sequence. We'll look at something from the historical perspective. Okay, where do we find it? That is the sources of that. And then, after getting to know the sources, we'll now look at when it's consumed, what the absorption. You know, after ingestion is digestion, and after digestion is absorption. Now, when it's absorbed, what are the functions? What are the metabolic processes, first of all? What are the metabolic processes it goes through? Breaking down and also building them up. Of course, you know, metabolism has to do with the breaking down of certain nutrients and then building them again in another form so that they'll be useful in the different tissues. Breaking them in the food source and then building them up to become components of the body cells or tissues. And then we'll be looking at metabolism and then the function. Then we'll look at the efficiency syndrome and then we'll draw the curtain on it by concluding. Thank you so much for staying tuned on this class. Please do stay with us again in the next class. If you got information that is valid, please share, like, and subscribe. Thank you so much. We'll see how we improve on these things. If you have a topic you think we should treat, please put it down. You have a question, please put so let's discuss them. If you have a question or even if it's an objection, please let us know. Thank you so much. Let's see you in the next class. Thank you. Bye-bye.